All right, now we're going to talk about tip. This begins on page 19. Tip is a way for people to pay someone in the service industry and let them know if they did a really good job or a not so good job. There is this belief that has been put out there that 15% is kind of standard. However, it has recently been increased to 20%. So you're supposed to say 20% is the norm, but I get why people go to 15% because it's a really easy amount to calculate when all you have to do is really multiply the tax by 2. But it's just a good way to sort of say, start with your 15% and then add or subtract from there in order to help tell the person, hey, you did a good job, or hey, you did a not so good job. All right. The price of a meal for 2 people is $70. They leave a 15% tip. First, they want to know the amount of tip. Then they want to know what the total amount of the meal and the tip together was. So first, let's go ahead and think about it this way. This bar represents 100% of the cost. This should look extremely familiar to you by now since you've seen it in 4 other situations. The total price for it was $70. They added on 15%, kind of the way you'd add on markup or tax. This means the total amount would be 115%. However, what we want to know about first is, what is the amount of the tip? So we write out our proportion. And we know that we're looking for the 15% of the 70 to give us our tip. We cross multiply like we normally would. And we get that the tip is going to equal $10.50. Which we can then add the cost of the meal to give us the total cost of $80.50 for both the meal and the tip together. Going on to the next one. The price of a meal is $15.50 for one person. That person leaves a 20% tip. What's the amount of tip and what's the total amount of the meal and tip together? We know that this bar represents 100% of the cost, which is $15.50. They add on a 20% tip. If we were finding just the total, we could add up the 100 and the 20 to get that they were paying 120%. However, we are being asked to find the tip. So we set up our proportion to give us 20% out of the 100%, and we want to know what's the amount of tip for $15.50. We cross multiply. And we get that the amount of tip is $3.10. And to find the total cost with the meal, we would add the $15.50 to it. And that's how we ended up with $18.60. Now I forgot to do the equation for the one above, so I'm going to scroll back up to do the equation for the one above. If you like the equation, I apologize that I forgot it. You start with your 0.15 for the percent of the tip, and you're going to multiply it by 70, and that's going to give you the amount of tip. For the one below, same idea. Again, this should look pretty much like tax and markup because it's basically the same thing. 0.20, we know it's 0.20 because we move it 2 spots. Much as on the top one, we knew it was 0.15 because we moved it 2 spots. And it's 0.20 and the price is $15.50. And that's how you're going to get the tip, by multiplying those two together. Moving on to page 20. You get a haircut that costs $23. If you tip the barber 12%, what is the amount of tip? We know that this bar represents 100% of the cost, which in this case is $23. And you tip the barber 12%, and all you're asked about is the tip. You're not asked about the total, you're just asked about the tip. We set up our proportion, saying that we have 12% out of 100, and we want to know what's the amount of the tip out of $23. Not what's the total, just what's the tip. Cross multiply. And you get that N is going to equal $2.76. We also could have gotten this with the equation by saying 23 times 0.12 to get the tip, which you then multiply 23 times 0.12, and we knew it was going to be 0.12 because we move it 2 places to the left and put a decimal point. The second problem on page 20. Your bill at the restaurant comes to $24.50. You decide to tip 16%. What's the final bill? So we know the bar is 100%. And we end up, the bill was $24.50. They've added on a 16% tip. We're wanting the total, therefore that's 116%. For our proportion, we're wanting to know the final cost for a bill that was $24.50 when you've added a 16% tip to 100% of the cost. Cross multiply. And we get that the final bill is going to be $28.42. We also could have gotten this answer in the equation by taking $24.50 and multiplying it by 1.16, and we knew it was 1.16 because we moved the decimal 2 spots to the left, and that gives us 1.16. The last problem on page 20. Your final bill is $51.28. This includes a 12% tips. What is the bill without the tax? So we know the total cost is 100%. We know they added a 12% tip, meaning total that's 112%, because we can add them together. The $51.28 includes that tip. And what we are wanting to know is, we want to know the bill without the tax. So when we set up our proportion, we know that we have 112% out of 100 because the bill includes the tax. And that 112% is the percentage that goes along with the bill coming to $51.28, and we want to know what it is without the tax. We cross multiply as we normally would. And we get a funky decimal of 45.785. So we're going to have to round and say, what does the 5 do to the 8? It makes it go up. Therefore, we get that the without tax, the bill will be $45.79. If we did this in equation form, we move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left to get 1.12, and the bill was 51.28, but that's going to be the part because that includes the tax. To get W by itself, we have to take 51.28 and divide it by the 1.12, and you'll still get $45.79 once you round.